Breaking news! Graham Stephan and other online gurus predict a housing collapse for the 612th time. And this time, they just might be right.
You people sound like a broken record.
Look, collapse is more than a little dramatic at this stage, but house prices around the world are certainly declining. And that is happening in response to a number of factors, following all-time highs, with the most obvious factor being the rise in interest rates in major economies that you are literally hearing about everywhere.
Did you check the interest rate?
However, this isn't new. In fact, it was in part intended by the various central banks, like the Fed, when they raised the federal fund rate or cash rate to increase the cost of borrowing. This is literally part of the plan.
This is all part of the plan.
And it was very much in planning and something that everyone should have been aware of when these decisions have been made recently.
Doc, are you aware of this?
I am now.
Naturally, when mortgages are more expensive, potential buyers are less willing, leading to less competition to push up prices.
That makes sense.
The other consequence is that existing variable mortgages become more expensive as lenders pass on the rate increases from central banks to borrowers. This also means that new mortgages become more expensive to service. So when a bank looks at a potential borrower's financial situation, they're less likely to be willing to lend you money. They're probably going to say you can only service a mortgage of X amount, where it used to be X plus 100. There's going to be less money made available to prospective purchasers, which of course means they can afford less for a house they're going to buy, and that all plays into a complex situation for competition.
Wow, that is so complex and trippy and cool.
Ironically, this is actually a good thing, and this is where falling property prices have a positive impact, because if the housing market kept growing steadily in cost, while the amount that you can borrow is going down due to the decisions being made by Federal Reserves, well, fewer people would be able to enter the market, because of course, costs go up, amount you can afford goes down, and the big gap in between just grows.
That would be terrible.
That's not a good thing. But luckily, natural market forces ensure that this doesn't occur.
Ben, but you're talking about market forces.
Man, this is so confusing.
You see, when assessing financial opportunities, you need to remember a few things, and that is that nothing is simply good or bad. Often, things which are typically what we think of as bad, like falling property values, have good aspects as well, which present opportunities for wealth creation.
Opportunity.
This is an important mindset in life to have, particularly in declining markets, which we're probably going to see in 2023. Of course, there are negative consequences to falling property values. For example, I just bought another larger property because I needed more space, and I did this 3 months ago, just off the back of what were recent all-time highs.
Terrible timing.
Now, if property prices continue to fall, this, at least on paper, is not a good thing. I say on paper because I have no intention of selling in the foreseeable future, and I don't plan to do a cash out refinance. So the value is, practically speaking, currently irrelevant. However, for people who are just finishing saving for a deposit, their pullback in the market will probably be well timed. It's a great opportunity for them if they're coming to the market with the same deposit they would have had otherwise for a house that's now worth less.
You were incredible at math.
People saving money as well will see benefits, because the rise in cash rate set by federal banks is going to mean that when the rates are passed on through commercial lenders, higher rates are available for people when looking at savings accounts. So you can actually benefit from compounding a basic savings account quicker.
Does that sound good?
Look, simply, if you can learn to stay positive and see the silver lining, you are going to find some great opportunities in the chaos and panic that others will fall victim to.
It's been an extremely volatile year.
Now, you might fairly be sitting there thinking, wait, I've seen this channel talk about real estate investment being a safe and reliable investment strategy over the long term. So why the clickbait title?
It's a great question.
Well, look, there's a reason. Coming off all-time highs, a lot of people have just entered the market, and some for the first time. And they've done so with record low deposits and record high mortgage principals, because of course, it's harder to buy a house with a 20% deposit if the house has doubled in value. It just becomes unrealistic as the cost of housing has outpaced the average incomes in most countries.
Too optimistic.
Now, while interest rates of the day are still incredibly low relative to recent years with what we've seen. Of course, we've had as high as 20% in the past. The significantly higher amounts borrowed, however, make for a very different financial situation for current borrowers. Studies by the Grattan Institute in Australia show that a 7% cash rate today would be as difficult to service for borrowers as a 17% rate was for borrowers only a decade ago. And if mortgage stress continues to rise and housing prices decline by more than 10%, then those purchasers who only put down a 10% deposit will officially owe more on the value of the home than they actually have. And with potential mortgage stress and cash rates rising, that's just going to get worse. You can see how this is a recipe for disaster for some people, and there will be some pain to be felt. And that might mean that for some people, tough financial decisions need to be made.
Nobody wants to hear that.
But it's important that those facts are faced and those short-term decisions, which might feel like backward steps, are taken to avoid serious hurdles down the road. Young borrowers are of particular risk here, which is why I say that some millennials may regret buying a home, because they're less likely to have the high incomes required to service not only the increasing cost of living that we're seeing everywhere, but the higher mortgage cost that comes with the rates increasing. They're also more likely to have bought during recent market highs, because millennials haven't exactly been buying property for the last 20 years. They've mainly been buying property in very recent memory.
It's not a controversy.
Of course, these are broad, generalised statements which may or may not apply to you, and of course, no one knows what will happen in the future. Housing prices may rise, people may be able to service their mortgages no matter what, and all may be perfectly fine. That's obviously a possibility. We don't know, and anyone who tells you they do know is lying, or probably more accurately, just an idiot.
Savage.
But we do know that there are risks, and these risks are real. People need to monitor their financial well-being to ensure they can avoid negative consequences.
Great advice.
One thing to remember if you have a variable rate is that as rates continue to rise, the more interest you'll be paying on your mortgage. Hence, and this is where you look for the silver lining, the more money you'll save in interest by making additional payments to discharge your mortgage early.
Exactly, you could pay off your mortgage.
And remember, once you own your home outright, your cash flow improves immediately by the value of your repayment, because each month you're no longer making that pay. You have that cash spare for other investments or other things.
What a relief that would be.
And of course, your cost of living equally decreases immediately, so it becomes a lot easier for you to retire and live off the dividends. So there are great lifestyle benefits to paying your mortgage off early, under any circumstance.
This is a really good idea.
Of course, there are valid arguments against doing this, but if you have a mortgage and it's causing you any degree of stress, then I think it's a wise and financially prudent decision to make to remove the cause of that stress. You'll be better off for it mentally if you make that decision.
That would be great.
Anyway, you might not agree. You might think everything I've just said is wrong.
I'm not going to argue with this guy.
Reasonable minds can differ. I'm more than happy to engage in the debate of ideas in the comment section, so let me know. Otherwise, take care of yourself, guys. Think rationally and make the right decisions.
And cut. That's a wrap, folks.